Hey guys, Tim here on Sailing Vessel Intrepid. A few of you have asked why I'm doing this. So my son Cody and I interviewed three friends, three different cruisers on their three different boats, and here's the answers they came up with. Enjoy.
Andrew Davis, 38, just turned 38. We've been on the boat cruising for a little over 2 months, I think. We left it around mid-October.
So
From Los Angeles, Marina Del Rey. And our first leg went to Catalina, then back to Marina Del Rey, down San Diego, and jumped on the Haha, down Baja.
my name is Eric Lund. I'm 27 as of a couple days ago. And I haven't lived in the United States for the last 3 years. I've been traveling and working abroad, and joined the boat Getting Naughty in October to start this trip down to Mexico.
My name is Jonas. I'm 42, and we moved aboard in September about 2.5 years ago. Right now it's January, so it's 2 1/3 years that we've been living aboard. We spent first 6 months in San Francisco, and then we were in Ensenada for a year, and now we're here in the Bay of Banderas for the last 6 or 7 months.
I'm Julia Johnkind, Jonas' wife, and I'm also 42 years old, and we moved aboard the boat in September 2015.
Well, my name is Bill Schreiner. I'm 58, and I came down just a handful of months ago in September to this part of Mexico, to the Nuevo Vallarta area, to move on to this boat that I bought here a few months earlier than that. I started the process of looking for a boat right about a year ago, a year from this exact time, and came down in June to look at the boat with a surveyor, and liked it. So in that process of surveying the boat, you kind of begin purchasing it, and it became mine over the next, 6 weeks, and moved it to a boat yard across the bay, and it stayed there, got some work done there over time, and had it kind of set up for me to come down at the beginning of September of 2016 to have them finish up a few things, step the mast, which means put the mast back up on the boat, and put the boat back in the water right around the beginning of September, after which point in time, 10 days, 15 days later, brought the boat back across the bay to this place, which is Paradise Village in Nuevo Vallarta, and I've been here with just a short break since middle of September.
Want me to go?
Yeah, this is the order we agreed on.
Oh gosh, let me see. I'm originally from Central California and moved to LA when I was about 19. And basically been in Southern California working mostly in advertising or technology, pretty much from then until I left a couple of years ago. Had my own company for a couple of years, sold it, and it was kind of like the green light to do this now. So
what was I doing before? So I went to college in his, right next to his hometown where he grew up, and then after that I went and joined the Peace Corps and was doing that for 2.5 years in West Africa. I'm wearing my shirt right now. And then we met on a website called Crewbay that connects people looking for crew, captains looking for crew, and crew willing to do whatever it takes to get on
Let
the
go
boat.
of the mast.
So, yeah. So we actually had only talked about doing this for like, I think I joined the conversation like 6 months before we left. Is when we connected on the internet. So.
And Crew Bay is not to be confused with Seaman Finder, which is a app for gay sailors.
Or Crew BAE, Crew Bay. You want to be my Crew Bay?
I hope you're kidding.
Probably not.
Oh my god.
It's actually great.
So why do you know about that?
Seaman Finder, it's a great app.
I was an IT consultant, still am. So I do computer programming and whatnot on the internet.
I'm a teacher and I work with the distance learning program in British Columbia. I did before we started and I continue to do so as we're traveling around.
Yeah, the last 10 years, 11 years, I've been up in Alaska. I worked in tribal health, and I'm a manager. I've managed large groups of clinics in tribal health. Alaska's kind of a different story. In most of the United States, members of different tribal groups, for the large part, depend on Indian Health Services to run the hospitals and to run the clinics and everything. That's not 100% accurate, but it's largely accurate because they're on the road system. But because Alaska has so many Native Alaskan villages that are off the road system, a little bit different kind of system has been developed, and Alaska Natives have been allowed to form their own health corporations. So instead of Indian Health Services running their care, they form their own health corporations and they run their own care. And I've been a manager up there, basically training members of those tribal groups to be the healthcare providers in their own villages and to provide services throughout much of rural Alaska, and then also manage many other programs for these healthcare organizations. So I've been up in Alaska for about 10 years. Before that, I've worked in California, Thailand, and Botswana, both in healthcare and in education. Most of my adult life has been in those two things, although like most people I've had some other careers in other fields that we find our way from, from kind of our high school and college days on through. But that's been most of my working life.
Yeah, so I don't have actually much sailing experience. I went, it's kind of weird actually. My brother won a trip on a sailing, like a catamaran chartered vacation.
I'll send you
back
videos.
in 06. We both loved it so much that we came back and bought a sailboat, just randomly out of San Diego. It was a 27-foot Coronado. Had that for many years and liked it enough where I just wanted to step and get a bigger boat.
You can tap my drink. It's just
And
left
I don't know, they were just, I love traveling, I love sailboating, so it's, for me, it was just kind of a natural thing, like this is what I wanted to do, and just kind of explore the world at a slow pace, and it can be pretty expensive, which is also pretty cool, so that's kind of what I wanted to do, what the dream was.
Yeah, similar response, but I guess my story is a little different because I grew up sailing and I became very passionate about sailing. I sailed competitively in high school and college, and then I always have wanted to try out sailing long term, and this is that tryout, I guess.
Well, for me, it was just principally a method of travel. We've been boating around in our neck of the wood in the Pacific Northwest on sort of 30-foot boats for 8 years or so, and we enjoyed the sailing. We wanted to travel and see the world, so the idea of purchasing a boat and just doing the old milk run seemed to be a way to see the world. And we also wanted to live in different countries, and the boating also provided a venue for that.
I definitely wanted to travel. The idea of sailing was not high on my list of things to do for traveling, so Jonas slowly convinced me, and here we are.
Yeah, when Cody and Tim, when I was younger, we water skied. My family, my father, my folks, they liked to get us out for vacations, and we really water skied or we motorcycled. That was kind of what our vacations were based around. My father hadn't. he kind of grown up without being able to do any vacations, and he was determined when he had kids, and there were 4 of us, that we would have things like that. So we weren't a rich family, kind of blue collar working class stuff, but he was determined we were going to get to do fun things like that. And so we got to we kind of had a balance between those 2 things. In the summer we would go water skiing, and then we would go motorcycling in fall and winter. And at some point we got a Hobie cat. I think I was in my teen years, and so kind of in high school years on up into college, we had first one. I think we might have even at one point had either a second one or had access to a second one, and so we were also doing some Hobie cat sailing. So I was no great shakes as a sailor or anything, and that's not any kind of, you know, massive sailing, just on small lakes and things. But I really found that was a lot of fun. Really liked it. And my brother was the one who really took off. He did a lot of sailing. He sailed. He went and sailed on larger sailboats with others, and eventually bought his own larger sailboat and had it out in Ventura and did that kind of thing. And I'd always had this thought just in the back of my head how great it would be to do this sailing trip with my brother. Maybe even like a big trip, maybe across an ocean or go around the world or something like that. Something I never even really talked to my brother about. Time goes by, and you know, I'm having thoughts about that last year actually, and some health concerns for myself come up, and some things with work, and I'm starting to think about, you know, maybe making a change, and that comes back to mind, and I'm thinking, well, it's too bad I'm not going to be able to do that with him, because he's got his own life and his own work and his own family. And really for the first time I start thinking about, well, heck, I've always thought about it being with him. I've never had a separate thought about, is there anything I could do separately? And it's just odd. Normally I would have gone on and looked into that on my own. I would have done the research and started to parse that out. But literally, you know, a year back or 13 months back, I dove into the internet and the research there, and then I got onto YouTube, which, as you guys both know, and as you know, we're making this video now, has a wealth of channels, sailing channels. So there's so much information out there, and I discovered that there was this you know, lifestyle that I hadn't really understood well, people living on sailboats and cruising. I kind of maybe had an idea about it, and I knew about people sailing and doing trips, but I hadn't really fully understood the number of people out there, and that there were a lot of people maybe trying to do at least part of it solo, and then how you could get folks, you know, maybe you could make passages and things with crew coming on board and different things. So I started to just put in, you know, literally 40, 50 hours, even 100 hours of research a week after that. Just when I wasn't working, I was doing research on that, and discovered that this is something that I wanted to go ahead and move forward in. Truly an extension of how I've been living. You know, I've lived on 4 continents. I've traveled all over the world as part of my work, and lived in Botswana, I've lived in Thailand, I've lived in England, traveled a lot of countries on those continents. And this kind of allows me to extend that. In this case, you're not just living in a country and traveling around it, you kind of take your house with you. So for me, I might be less about the sailing than I am about the ability to go live in different places and be able to be mobile with my home. But that's kind of how I came to this as a living on this boat, Abilene, and taking up this lifestyle.
Well, yeah, I don't know. It's changed a lot for me. In my 20s, I was, you know, living in Los Angeles. It's a very different mentality where people are all chasing money and material possessions, and I was in that same mindset throughout probably most of my 20s until I realized that stuff really wasn't that important, and kind of did a 180 where I ended up, before I left on this trip, either giving away everything I own or selling it, and I owned three cars and all kinds of stuff. Ended up getting rid of pretty much everything, and everything I own is pretty much on this boat now, which is a very weird feeling if you've never got rid of everything you own. So
I know the feeling.
yeah.
I got rid of everything I owned like 3 years ago. I've been pretty much living out of I can fit all my possessions in a suitcase basically. I mean, I've been living kind of a regular life for a couple of years already, so, but this is so much different, you know, just being able to pick up and go anywhere is a pretty good feeling.
Yeah, and I think you also, once you get rid of a lot of that crap in your life, you realize what's really important versus what isn't important. Like, most of the stuff I got rid of, I held on to because I don't know, I just thought I wanted it, and then once you get rid of it, like, I haven't really thought about any of that stuff since, which is weird. I don't know.
So I guess we wanted to do this. First we decided we wanted to do it, and then we bought one boat and we started working on it. But working on that boat was going slowly. It seemed like it might take a long time. And we knew our kids were growing up, and we wanted to do it sort of while our children were young enough that we could do it before they wanted to go to high school and all those family complexities. So we went a timeline. So then a buddy of mine found this boat in San Francisco, and the owner had a heart attack, and they were all getting lined up to do their own trip. So they were sort of gung-ho for a fast sale, and they sold it at a reasonable price. So we picked this boat up in San Francisco. It's made of plywood, so it's needed some little repairs, because plywood and the fiberglass don't really get along that good. So we make little repairs as necessary.
And in essence, we were looking for a boat that we could accommodate our family and an extra crew member or two as needed. And for the longer stretches of our voyaging, my dad's come with us, so we've kept it in the family so far. And the kids each have their own little section of the boat, so they're feeling a little bit like it's theirs and not just what their parents are making them do. So that's kind of helpful.
Yeah, no, I get the question. It's a great question, and it's something that I've had to do a lot. So I'm probably a little bit more experienced at it than some other people. Not everyone. I think you guys are pretty good at it too, knowing something about your story. But I've had to get up and move, or the lifestyle I've chosen. You know, my father was an acid technician and engineer, and he was really good at what he did. And yet, when he started with them, he was kind of without a lot of seniority. So they moved our family every year for about 8 years when I was just starting in school. So, I mean, from kindergarten on, I lived in a different state every year. It was Florida for Cape Canaveral or back to Jet Propulsion Land. So I grew up moving every year. And maybe that gets in your blood. I don't know, you know, kind of like folks who grow up with military families or other kinds of parents who have to move a lot. Maybe it just becomes something you're used to. You find that that you like moving on, and so I found that as an adult, you know, it's for me the idea of picking up and moving on. You know, I joined. I moved from Southern California where I grew up to Northern California, and then I joined the Peace Corps and I went to Botswana. That's a 2-year stint. Loved it, so I put in 3 years. I applied for and got a 3rd year. Then I went traveling across Africa and Asia for 6 months on my way to take up a post at a university in northern Thailand. Spent about 5 years there, and also traveled around, and then came back to do grad school. Kind of changed professions, moved into healthcare from education, and started out in that field in Southern California, and then having been up to Alaska during the Valdez oil spill, and knowing what a great place that was, kind of getting a taste for it, I had the opportunity to move up to Alaska, and I've lived in 2 different great locations, Bethel and Kodiak up there. So you kind of get a sense of wanderlust into things. So what did I leave behind? I had in Kodiak, Alaska, where I was living and working before I bought the boat and came down here, I had a beautiful house, and I had furniture I'd been collecting for several decades. I had art I'd been collecting, and I had a lot of possessions, even though I tried not to be somebody who had a lot of possessions. And I'd been getting rid of stuff along the way, especially from my move from Bethel to Kodiak in Alaska. There's a Japanese author who really talks about decluttering, and I'm a big fan of hers. So I practice that, but even so, I had to go down from having a house and a truck and all of the things that go with that, and I got down to about 1,000 pounds of belongings that I owned afterwards, of clothing and kitchen goods and some remaining pieces of art and family heirlooms and stuff. That's about what I own plus this boat at this point. And I know a lot of people own that or less. So you give up that, and then of course you're giving up your connection to the people and the places where you've made attachments to all that. But you guys have done it a lot. I know that you've made a lot of moves and made new friends, and so I guess that's the trade-off. You're leaving behind one set, hoping to make great new friendships along the way.
Prostitution.
I can
Coming back to the app. Really gonna push this app, guys.
We're running out of daylight, Cody.
No, support myself. So I sold the company, saved a lot of money, made I was into stock trading a lot and made some decent money there. So that's what afforded me the ability to buy the boat and put enough away in a sailing kitty where I could do this comfortably for a while and be okay. Again, just if you watch your expenses, it's not that bad after the initial investment of it. Like, once Eric and I are outside of a major port like this, we don't spend that much money, which is really nice.
Yeah, I mean, he's the boat owner, so
Yeah, that's probably that answers both of you, huh?
Okay, we're splitting costs. Like, yeah, he owns the boat, but we're splitting the other costs.
So then, how do you just have money saved up? Or you
Yeah,
still work?
I had a little money saved up, but like, I'm not gonna be able to support myself indefinitely, so I'm gonna have to go back and work at some point.
I still do the IT consulting, so that's more or less worked. At times we've had more or less money, but hopefully it'll continue to work out.
And I work part-time online through education, so we have a base income every month. Not great, but it's sufficient. It's a lot.
Well, that comes up a lot in the different videos. My favorite discussion of that, you see it on Delos, you see it on Follow the Boat's probably one of the best discussions. The British couple, Liz and Jamie, have a great discussion about that. In my case, I think like a lot of folks, having been putting money away, I was saving up. I had planned to work longer, and I would have worked longer, but some health issues came up that kind of got me to thinking, and there were some interesting things going on at work. So I thought I'd basically kind of place a bet on myself in a sense, and that's really what I'm doing. And it's not an easy bet, because the smarter move would have been actually to stay and work another 5 to 10 years and save up more money. So I'm going to have to be cautious, and I'm going to have to be a little bit lucky, but I basically bet on my ability to manage the funds that I've set aside appropriately in a way that will allow me to live on this boat and afterwards, and be able to do things I want to do, and yet having lived in all these places and learned to live modestly, that's part of the bet that I'm making, is that I can live modestly, have a good time, and marshal the funds that I've set aside through savings appropriately.
I mean, who knows what the future holds? I think that's one thing I've kind of learned on this whole thing is who knows where we'll be in a year from now or 2 years from now. But my goal is hopefully to have enough investments and cash flow that I can, as long as I watch my expenses, be able to do this indefinitely. So at a very high level, we're going to go down to Central America, Costa Rica, Panama, across through the canal, and then probably hang out in the Caribbean for a little while. I don't know, a year or two, and then again, I don't know what the future holds, but I'm thinking that maybe find a place there and somewhere around there and hang out for a couple years. But
set up a beach bar
called Dos Gringos. Eric will have a sail shop in the back. We'll run some scuba charters.
I know how to make eggs, which I know sailors love. I don't know.
That's pretty much it. Try not to plan too far out, and I think it's a lot of a mentality that a lot of people have. They're doing this thing. It's like plans change very quickly.
Yeah.
Well, I guess our short-term plans is that we want to spend the next 2 or 3 years sort of between here and Australia and the South Pacific and Southeast Asia, I guess. Figure out those areas. And eventually we'll have to go back to life in Canada, so make some decision, I guess, and then fly back and rent a place and return to life, put our kids in high school and do all that stuff. But we think we still have a few years left before we have to do that. Our oldest is 13 right now, so it means we got maybe 3 more years. Or maybe we'll just put him in a boarding school, keep sailing.
We have family in Canada that may or may not put him up for his high school years, but we'll see. Because then the next one's ready to go, then the next one's ready to go, the next one's ready to go. So it might be that time when we settle down for a stretch again and finish the high school years for them and get them set off into adulthood anyway, and then we'll take off again, possibly, by ourselves, without children.
Well, there's no plan to run out of money. The plan is to stay within the envelope. There are things I could do to go back and do some earning, but hopefully I can again stay within the kind of envelope of the earning and not need to do that. Where would I like to go? Like a lot of people, the dream would be for me to do a circumnavigation. I'm so new at this. I'm so new to sailing. I've taken it on as a beginner. That to set that out as a goal is a bold statement. But right now I'm really taking it one day at a time, 1 week. Kind of immediate plans are really first trips and to learn the different things I need to learn and to get the boat in the right shape and to have small successes and to build on those. There's so many great places to go. The Sea of Cortez is my first journey to get up and spend significant time up in the Sea of Cortez, and then to head down the Pacific coast of Mexico, and then from there it would be a choice of whether to go down and turn right, head to the South Pacific, as you guys have talked about doing or are going to do very shortly, or to go down and cross through Panama Canal and go in and spend some time in the Caribbean and keep working on the sailing skills down there. And great thing is I don't need to know yet because I got lots of time between now and those decision points. But it'll be fun finding out.
I think the biggest thing that I've learned so far is it's not as, I don't know, I thought it was going to be way more overwhelming, stressful, I don't know, just like overall craziness, like sailing around. It's really not. Like, you as long as you do proper planning and stuff like that, it's been pretty mild for us since we've done this. Of course, we're very new at this, but it's been pretty mild. We've only had like a day of like kind of like crappy conditions, but no, I don't know. It's awesome. It's fun, and like everyone told me, it's like everyone talks about it. You just have to do it. Like you just have to get out there, because people talk about it forever and never go, type of thing.
I think a good example of that would be that, like, when I first met Andrew, he had this massive list. I'm sure you still have it.
Still have it.
It's a page long of things to do, like page 3 columns, more than probably 100 things on the list. 20% of them are checked off, and like, we're gonna leave in a week. I was like, okay. And I think the thing you got to realize is that if you're waiting for your list to be done, you're never gonna leave.
Correct. Yeah.
So you just got to be prepared to not have everything perfect that you imagined. You just go and figure it out. And once you go, you realize, okay, well, maybe that thing on the list wasn't even necessary, and you just, I don't know.
Yeah, 100%.
One thing that surprised me is how sort of easy things have been. I've been able to carry my life onto the boating world and live in new places and still pay the bills, and feels like in just a few years of like living in these boats in different countries and different communities, I've made like a lot of memories. So it feels like a major phase of my life in terms of the number of memories, right? Whereas maybe before us sort of recycling the same day over and over again. By doing this, I was able to create a lot of new, different days, new memories.
Yep.
Yeah. When you bring kids on board, just remember they have a lot of energy and boats are a small space, so make sure you've got plans for that and ways to deal with it. So, one of the things we can do with our kids is they can loop, because our boat has a circle they can go through. But we're staying at the docks and the marinas a lot because I can kick them off to go play, and they do.
Well, I don't know how it would fit in, but something that we've talked about is that there are a lot of ways to come to sailing. It's a really intimidating thing. The idea of setting out, sailing, buying a sailboat. The more time you spend around anyone or any group who has boats, the jokes are constantly about the amount of work that boats are and the amount of money they take and everything. But at the same time, they also become your home. They become a great source of freedom. They're all of these. I've talked to some other folks about this. There are all these shows now about tiny houses. We've all kind of probably seen some of those shows, and a lot of the people who might see this video will have seen those shows. They're on all different channels, and yet few, if any, of those tiny houses can match what's been going on sailboats for years. I mean, sailboats are the ultimate kind of folding deck when it comes to making a livable space in a very small compacted space, having the ability to cook and sleep and everything else, and to have it cross oceans and be sturdy and be able to keep you safe in all kinds of conditions. So they're really neat machines in a sense, as well as your home, and offer this ability to take you different places. But again, they're intimidating, and there are other folks who might be watching and looking at this thing and thinking that only people who've sailed for many years or grown up with it or whatever would ever think to try something like this. So I know that you guys came to it not that many years ago, and you've attacked it with ferocity, and the things you're already doing and have done are pretty impressive. I haven't done anything yet, but I've got a plan, and I'll build on that, and hope to get to all kinds of interesting places. So I would say that for those who may come to this video wondering if sailing could be for them, I would certainly say not to let a lack of experience intimidate you and keep you from considering as a possibility that you can you can find some wonderful boats out there for reasonable amounts of money. And yeah, they take time and effort and some funds to keep them up to spec and to keep them operational, but they're a lot less expensive than, you know, buying a house or something. And I was just talking with someone about the amount of taxes that you pay on a typical house that you might buy today in the Southern California area, and the taxes that you would pay on a typical kind of average home in Southern California right now, those taxes would easily pay your upkeep. All right, there's fireworks going off here, plus someone knocking on the boat. Yeah, come on down. So when you think about that maybe you need to spend, you know, X thousands of dollars on upkeep for your boat.
Oh, okay.
That's what taxes alone would be on a house in a lot of places. Well, that's something to think about as well. So that's just a couple of quick thoughts.